The shells are made from PVC pipe, and they are just under 27 millimeters in diameter and 40 millimeters long. The shells should be the first thing you make because the diameter of the shell determines the width of the magazine, and that determines the width of the receiver. So all the components depend on the diameter of the shell. So work out what size your shells will be and then alter the components as you need to. This pattern of magazine will use a thin extension spring. Think the sort that you would use in a stapler, and a pulley system. So the spring will hook onto here, go around the pulley and attach to the follower. That means you want to drill these holes first, and this hole is just an access hole in case I need to unscrew the pulley. The follower is just a block of wood, but this hole down the centre is there for a couple reasons. The first is to save weight, as a lighter follower will move more easily. And the second is I find without it, it tends to vacuum seal when it moves inside the magazine. So that allows air to pass through too. Now you can see how it works. So the spring is anchored back here with a little pin. We've got a pulley there and another pin in the follower. You need to take care to make sure those pins don't bump into each other or bump into the pulley. But that works really nicely now. You can screw the other side plate down so that the insides can still be accessed. I've had to use these really teeny tiny screws because this piece is so thin. You might want to change that. And once it's screwed in place, you can glue this other rail in. That'll make it nice and easy to align. Once the floor plate is glued in place, the magazine is finished. See how that pulley works with the spring. Nice and smooth. This is the OG magazine of the Bolter, and it has two features that I would not recommend. The first is it's powered by a coil spring. And this coil spring was the best I could come up with. It's from a Nerf rival magazine, and the spacer prevents it from buckling. Even this isn't the ideal spring for it. The second feature is it has a hold open device. So there's also a track inside this magazine for that hold open device. Follower goes in, and then the hold open is screwed in place. Now, the follower catches a little bit, so you'll need some kind of wood wax to lubricate that nicely. And then the spring goes in. The floor plate is two separate pieces. It's got a block to hold the spring and then the floor plate itself. And that is just held by a single screw at the bottom. The main body of the Bolter is made up of 3 different modules sandwiched between 2 side plates. The barrel is the simplest module. It is just a block of wood with a muzzle pin, nice sturdy steel, and this additional block carries the slide return spring. It clips on. That's a nice soft spring. And the muzzle device, that just wraps around the barrel. Now we'll paint that orange. The grip module has a few features. First one is that the trigger springs are pinned in place like that. And they can fit nicely underneath the grips that fit on like that. So we've got some 19mm thick pieces, and then we've got these thicker pieces that are attached to it. And of course, we've got the base plate. Last of all, we've got this funny looking piece. We've got some 35mm wide wood over here. We've got a 19mm thick piece here. And attached to that is a 15mm thick piece. This block is the magazine catch itself. It goes in here. This hole allows the button to interface with it. And this little bit is the slide catch. Slide catch screws into place with a teeny tiny spring there, and the magazine catch interfaces with that. I'll show you how this component works when it's all assembled. Those three modules simply screw into the side plate. The side plates themselves are pretty simple. This one has a window for the ejection port, while this one has a little pin to hold the ejector. That is only necessary because of the hold open device. Without the hold open device, you just glue this in. On the inside of each plate, there's an additional piece of 3mm ply, and that is just to strengthen a bit, or else these holes are a little bit shallow. I'll install the hold open device in case you really want to have a go at it yourself. And it's actually held in by the ejector. So if it's underneath it like that, these three moving parts are all really heavily constructed. It is a double lamination of 6mm marine ply with a 6mm steel access pin. Start with the trigger. Now this block is only to interface with the hold open. I'm using these hex nuts as spacers. That just fits in like that, and you can see here how it interfaces with the hold open. The sear has the same spacers and some little screws for the return springs. Again, I've fit these so I can just press them in place and stretch them to the grip. And there's meant to be an identical spring on the other side. Magazine catch button can really be any shape that you like, and that screws into place. This little sleeve here is just so it doesn't bite into the wood. So that just screws into this hole, which also controls how far it travels. If you wanted to, you could even have it ambidextrous and have this same knob on the other side too. The last moving part is the rotor. I've since changed this in the plans to a somewhat better high inertia system. The slide is assembled the same as the receiver. We have these two side plates that attach to these central blocks. There's really not much going on here, only that the width of these blocks is dependent on the width of the receiver. The other thing that's going on is the ejector that screws into place here. That also has a hole to interface with the slide return spring. In this state of assembly, we can attach the slide to the frame. Something like that. We'll attach the return spring later. Now you can see how the whole thing works. In its loaded state, the slide would be locked open. You can see the slide catch pops up automatically to lock the slide open. Insert the magazine. Catch locks into place in just the right spot that it pushes the slide catch down. So then the slide releases and it's ready to fire. Pulling the trigger releases the rotor, which moves down and strikes this piece. But what it also does is it pushes the slide back. Because the force on the rotor is very high, it pushes it hard enough that inertia will cause the slide to kick all the way back, eject the shell, and then it will return via its own spring pressure, just like that. Releasing the trigger resets the rotor, ready for another shot. However, as this is the last shot, the hold open tab on the magazine blocks this piece from moving. So the trigger doesn't go anywhere until, of course, you change magazines. Now that it's empty, you can push the magazine catch, which will drop the magazine. The slide hold open pops back into place, but as you can see, the slide can still overcome it, so that it can be locked back and reloaded. A few last details. The first, as you can see, this high inertia rotor, and you can also see how the slide is stabilised. The slide tends to wobble around a lot, but this little bearing ensures it doesn't drop too far down, and this side plate ensures that it doesn't go too far up. Both the crest and the two side plates have been glued on with Titebond liquid hide glue. You could probably use hot glue instead, but I wanted it to be removable. Of course, you need to make sure you've performed all the correct rituals to appease the machine spirit before you glue these in place, because you don't want to have to remove them. I have to say, I think I really nailed the colours and the finish on this, so I'd like to cover them. Most of the time I use these paint and prime paints, and I painted directly onto the PVC. Nice smooth finish, sticks really well. Same brand of grey. I actually varnished all the wood first and then painted it directly with the spray paint. And this really lovely blue is Dulux hammered finish, and the silver is this rub and buff. Another thing I did with the rub and buff is I actually coated the inside of a lot of parts to disguise the fact that it's all made of wood. But unlike paint that puts a thin film on and decreases reliability, as it is a wood wax, it actually increases the reliability. So anyone want to sponsor me?